Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to participate in the meeting via Zoom may do so by clicking this link. Members of the public who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID 871-8336-6920. Then press pound and pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on the telephone keypad or using the raise hand function on Zoom. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. In the event that despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. And now I'd like to take the roll call. John Doherty is excused. John Dugas.
Present.
Mary Ann Galuzzo.
Here.
Michelle Kincaid.
Here.
Lee Martinson.
I'm here.
Bernie Nally.
I just signed on.
Okay. Kevin Stokes. Is Kevin here? No. Then press *9 on the telephone keypad or using the raise hand function on Zoom. Okay, are we all set with the audio? Okay. All right, so our first meeting tonight is with Tina Stewart with the Public Library. Welcome, Tina.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and glad to see everybody is well and with us tonight. So I'd like to start by giving you sort of an overview of what the library has been doing since COVID. So starting back in March, I do have some photos, so I'm going to see if I could share my screen. I'm getting hopefully a little more adept at all of this. So, okay. So before we start here with Curbside, we did, the library was in keeping with the emergency shutdown of the library building. The library building closed and staff began working remotely on March 24th. And during this time, we expanded and promoted our digital resources, including ebooks, audiobooks, online tutorials. And as you could see in the increase of 28% over last year in the use of our digital resources. We redesigned our library website, homepage to facilitate access to resources. We offered library cards online, connected with patrons via weekly email newsletter and on social media. We offered tech help via email, and we began offering virtual programs, transitioning. We had to cancel at this point all our in-library programs due to the COVID and the shutdown. So we contacted performers to see which ones were able to transition into virtual programs. Staff who are working remotely were also assigned online training modules to keep up with their skills and to learn new skills. And working with Charlotte Wood, the assistant library director, we began planning for a phased reopening of the library. Now, this involved, no one had ever done this before, obviously, in our lifetime. So this involved, certainly researching what other libraries across the country were doing in terms of protocols, and talking and meeting with Zoom with my neighboring colleagues in MVLC, and communicating with the Mass Board of Library Commissioners for guidelines, and also with Shelley Newhouse, the Board of Health. So library staff returned to the building on May 26th, and that day we started curbside service. And what this involved is patrons would order their books online on the Carriage Library catalog, and when their books came in, they were notified via text and email, and they would come to the library's parking lot. They could call the library once at the main number, the main desk when they arrived, or they also now we have a text option, and they could text the library when they arrive, and staff would get the books from the hold shelf, check them out, and bring them out and place them in the trunk of the patron's car. So this, we continue to do this today. We're still, curbside is still pretty busy. And in 2000, this past year, 2020, we did, I think, 7,000 curbside pickups. But there are many library patrons enjoy browsing, and they really missed this while the library building was closed. So during the good weather, on Tuesday morning and Thursday evening, we did library on the lawn, and we were able to put out our new books, bestsellers, children's books, and patrons really enjoyed this opportunity to do what they call, just browsing for something rather than having to go online to order it. On August 3rd is the date that we decided to reopen the building. So by appointment. So we started taking appointments for patrons to come into the building on August. This is books in quarantine on August 3rd, and the appointments really were limited to only like 6 on the first floor, 2 people on the computer, and 1 family per visit in the children's room. And we did that all the way up until November 2nd. And on November 2nd, we decided that appointments really weren't needed on the first floor, that the number of people coming in was still pretty small, and we were able to control it because most people were just coming in to visit, to pick up their books, and there was no long-term seating. All our seating had been blocked off. So, and the only seating was for there were like 2 computer workstations where we allowed people to use the computer. So we were at that phase reopening up until December 7th, when we decided that we needed to close the building due to the post-Thanksgiving surge, when the numbers started to go up in Wilmington. So as of today, we are still only providing curbside service to patrons. So the building is now closed, but we certainly still are doing, we're here to answer the phone. We're here to provide the curbside and also all the virtual programming, which I'll give you some examples of the kinds of virtual programming we're doing. So this is a picture of the books in quarantine. That's the other thing we do. When books are returned in the book return, we put books into quarantine for 3 days before they go back into circulation as a safety precaution. So when we opened the building by appointment, as you can see, public buildings did put up the shields, the plastic shields around our service desk. When people came in, we had a hand sanitizer station and a sign where visitors were required to wear a mask. And we never had a problem. People were very cooperative. They were very appreciative of being able to come into the building and happy to be able to be welcomed back. So it all really went well. So I'm hoping that when the numbers go down, we'll be able to certainly reopen at least on a limited basis once again in the next as the vaccine begins to expand and our COVID numbers go down. This is an example, like again, we're doing a virtual story time. On the left is our assistant children's librarian, Nicole. I snapped a picture of her as she was singing up in the conference room on one of her story time sessions. And again, we do regular story time every day, every morning for the preschool crowd. And on the right is a mother sent this in to Barbara, our children's librarian, showing her children watching the story time at home. Again, we're really our virtual events. Like back in March, I didn't even know what Zoom was, and now we are like really Zoom experts. At least my staff are Zoom experts. So so many of our programs now are virtual, but it's a whole new normal, I guess. And this is just an example of one of the virtual programs. This speaker is Diane D. Napoli. She gave a presentation on rescue of 40,000 penguins following the treasure oil spill in South Africa in June 2000. And that's 2 of our staff co-hosting that program. And on the right is just a flyer that promoting an author program. Frederick Bachman is a Swedish author, and he actually zoomed from Sweden for this program. This program is one of the examples that we're collaborating with area libraries for these big name authors, and which they like it because we get bigger numbers. And he was zooming from Sweden. We had people not only locally zooming, but people in other states and even in other countries listening to Frederick Bachman talk about his books. And if you know, he's famous for A Man Called Of. If any of you have read any of his, that was one of his more famous ones. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that during the good weather, we found that people really, really missed programs being outside. People were zoomed out. So we try to do as many programs outside as we can when the weather permits. This is our teen librarian outside in the Peggy Kane Reading Garden teaching knitting. And then the front lawn, this was a tie-dye program. We've also done things like there was a birding walk of local birds in the Wildwood Cemetery recently. We're going to do a historical walk coming up. They also did a story time at Yentile Farm was done. So there's a number of outdoor programs when it's feasible that we could do that, because I think people really appreciated that during the nice weather. I did want to update you on the stairwell renovation. And on the left was the stairwell that enters into the children's room. I think I showed you that picture last year. And on the right, you can see when it was under construction. And the one good thing about the shutdown is that they were able to do all the dusty, dirty work while the library staff was not on site. So this was finished when we returned to the building in May. So this is what the finished product looks like. On the left is the room in the children's room, which again, that was that stairwell, which is now a small little room where children and parents and teens will be able to use when we again reopen for full service. But now the good news is that we can use this as office space and accommodate the physical distancing that is required for the staff. Our office spaces are very small. Barbara and the teen librarian usually share a very small closet-like office with really no window. So this allows them to keep the physical distance while the library is closed. So Barbara is now using this as her office. And on the left, you can see where the stairwell was being jackhammered out. I got to snap this picture. I was very excited to see this was the beginning of the project. And on the left, you can see where Brad McKenna, this is where the first floor, this again was the bottom of the stairwell is now Brad's office. And Brad is our technology librarian. This is where he does virtual tech help and a number of other cool tech projects. And we call this Brad's man cave. So I think he's real happy to have this space. These, again, to remind you that all these projects were done with Barbara Johnson Trust funds. None of these projects were done with taxpayer money. This is a room that we added on the first floor of the library, which we're going to allow people to use for a small meeting space. What we found is that we not only get calls from community groups for looking for meeting space. A lot of times we have people who just need to meet with another person to chat over something. Sometimes we have a group of 3 or 4 people who prefer not to meet in the kitchen, but they're not a part of an organization, but they just want a place to meet to, plan a reunion or something, but they really would like to meet in a neutral place. So this is, again, will be a nice space for that purpose. And so this, again, we're looking forward, and Brad will be able to do tech help in here in this room with, some degree of privacy, which right now was being done right in front of our circulation desk. So this will give him and the patron he is helping a little bit of a privacy and quiet. I also wanted to let you know, as you know, at the annual town meeting, the voters authorized the naming of the outdoor reading area, the Peggy Kane Reading Garden. And we were able to dedicate this in late September. Again, we just had a small ceremony with a few trustees and a few members of our Friends e-board and members of Peggy's family. So it was, for all of us who knew Peggy, this was a very important dedication, and we were very happy to be able to honor her in this way. And this space, I am personally pleased at how well it's come out and seeing how much it is really used by the public. We have we have Wi-Fi connection on the building. People sit there with their laptop. I see people just driving up and sitting there to chat. So it's really very well used. I also wanted to let you know that this year, the Wilmington Memorial Library is celebrating its 150th anniversary. And this is the logo that our marketing librarian, Ellen Boyle, designed for us. And we're going to be doing promotional materials on this and trying to, certainly promote the history of the library and collect memories from people who remember when it was at the 4th of July building. And we're having some pictures enlarged of the old library and some of, I'll say, the former library directors. And so we're really excited about this, and we hope to, have some yard signs that people can place in the yard and commemorate, the impact the library has had on the community over these many years. So that's the end of my presentation on library services under COVID. So I'll be happy to answer any questions before I review my budget request for FY22. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right.
Does anybody have any questions for Tina? Okay, you can go ahead into the budget, please.
Okay. So since I've been director, this is the first year the personnel budget has gone down. And the reason for that is that we had 2 full-time employees retire and who are at the top of their grade level. And then we also had 2 full-time employees resign who had each worked over 5 years. So in the budget, for these positions, there are starting at step 1. So that has decreased the budget numbers. We currently have 1 full-time vacancy and 2 part-time associate vacancies and 1 library page vacancy. They're funded in this request because what we're certainly hoping to come back into a fuller library service by at least in the next year. Even if it's done gradually as we do, we hope to fill these positions as we expand our service hours going forward. So they are not all filled now. We're not up to full staff yet, but hope to be certainly at this time next year, maybe, and hopefully as COVID numbers subside. The contractual services, miscellaneous contractual has gone up. And, these, as I mentioned, we have had, to add Zoom accounts to our budget. And even going forward, I think we will be doing a hybrid of, programming. There will be certainly, we hope to bring back our patrons into the library for programming. That will be done gradually. But I think that we'll be still offering some level of Zoom programming because things like I pointed out, like the author programs that we can collaboratively do with other libraries and authors can Zoom from their home no matter where they are. So I think we'll be doing, still continue to do some Zoom programming even as we come back to normal. And the other thing we're going to continue, we're probably going to do some of curbside as well. Because curbside, we found that, families with children who just want to pick up their books, it's really quite a nice convenience. And elderly people who would rather not get out of their car, especially in bad weather, it won't be certainly from 10 o'clock until 7 at night the way we do now, but we'll have it on certain days, certain hours where we have the staff to, especially library pages, to run the books out. So we're trying to figure out the logistics to be offering that, but we hope that's another service going forward that will remain here at the library. We also purchased a new software platform that is under contractual. It's called BiblioBoard. And this is a software which allows us to collect community information. For example, for the 150th, we'll have what they call a board where people can submit their memories of the library, old photographs, or even testimonials. So, and also we're bringing back our annual poetry contest, and they would be submitting their poetry submissions on this new platform, and it makes it easier for us to collect and to display the works. Merrimack Valley Library Consortium, at the assessment has stayed the same for the 4th year, maybe even to the 5th year, which is nice. That has not gone up. We are asking to level fund our library programs. Again, even though we're not doing in-library programs, the virtual programs, these speakers do charge a fee. And as you know, the Friends of the Library bookstore next door had to close during COVID. So that revenue stream has decreased. They have done some outside sales, which has been really nice and successful, but obviously during the winter months, they cannot do that. And so the revenue stream that from the Friends to support programming is just not there at the same level. So this is really essential so that we can continue our programming. Training and conference is level funded. Of course, we're not going anywhere right now, but we hope that when, again, at this time next year, when the annual late state and local conferences resume, that we'll be able to send staff to them. And if not, there are virtual conferences that are being held, and there are fees for those virtual conferences that many of my staff, we do encourage, continuing education. We feel that is worth the investment into training and conference and webinars that they take are very important and worth the investment. So office and library supplies, again, has gone down slightly. I think that's mainly because we have put more money into digital versus physical given the situation. So some of the requirements to process books, we don't need as much materials. A lot of our budget is going towards the digital materials. And again, same thing, the books and materials is also level funded, same as FY21. There's no request for furnishings and equipment. We're not requesting anything in that category this year. I did want to point out that we always meet with John O'Neill from IT to review our budget requests. And this year in his budget, we'll be requesting replacement of 10 staff PCs and 1 Mac for our marketing librarian. And we will be replacing the staff printer copier on the first floor. I also want to give a shout out to public buildings. They have been, certainly instrumental, as they always are, in really helping us through the whole cleaning process and putting the shields around the service desks. But they also are always here as carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and certainly in keeping the building in good shape. So we work very closely with George and his crew. And finally, I just wanted to let you know that we just received a $3,360 CARES grant from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. These funds are earmarked what they call for education programs for both, the adult population and children's, and we're using some of that money for marketing and technology. And last year, I think I mentioned to you, last year we had a $7,500 LSTA, which is federal library money, grant for healthy aging. Charlotte Wood, the assistant library director, applied for that grant and managed it. We did a lot of programs geared toward the senior population. And we were just ready to have a wonderful health fair with Terry Marciello and Nancy Valley in March of last year that had to be canceled. So that was unfortunate, but we were still able to do some virtual programs, finishing up the grant that finished up on September 30th of 2020. That was the end of that grant. So I did want to let you know that, certainly we look out for grants when they're there, when the Mass Board of Library Commissioners makes these grants available. We at least try to, go after them when we can. So that's, again, the budget is pretty much standard. There isn't too much new in it. And it's, I think, pretty reasonable, so a request.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about the budget portion for the library?
No, looks good.
Okay, do we have any public comments, Andrew?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. Well, Tina, thank you very much for an excellent job.
Yep. Thank you all for your support.
And thank you for being so flexible and continuing to give great service to the community during these times that none of us anticipated.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting. We really miss seeing people in the library, so we're really looking forward to when we could reopen again.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now we will be moving on to the Recreation Department and Karen Campbell. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much. It's so great to see everybody. Yes. It's so nice to get out of our little bubble every once in a while and see some faces, and it feels like it's been a long time, but hope everybody's doing well. We did find out very, very quickly that if there's a definition of recreation and what's not recreation, social distancing is not recreation. So we have really had to revamp, reload, and pivot is our word. We're in the constant pivot phase. It's kind of interesting to go back to when we, as Tina just did, how the history of how this past year has rolled out. And I remember so well that the very first thing that happened was that we were told we had to vacate all of our programs that were going on in the schools. And that was when they said nobody could be in the schools but school staff and students and administration. And we had to stop a lot of programs mid-program. And since then, shortly after that, we were told that it was going to be 2 weeks that we were out of work, and we couldn't believe it. And so we quickly had the recreation department phone forwarded to my cell, so we didn't miss a phone call. We knew people were very confused and had a lot of questions about exactly what was happening with their children and their programs, or their own programs, or trips that were coming up. And we were able to be in touch with all of our customers all the way through. So as soon as we could, we got back into the office, and we've been trying to pivot some more. So you probably are well aware of all the things we couldn't do, concerts on the Common and sports leagues, and the town beach had to be closed for the first time ever. No tickets to big events or amusement parks, or and certainly a huge halt on all of our travel. So what have we been doing? It might be a good question to answer. We have actually started coming out with more frequent newsletters than ever. We used to just do a quarterly newsletter. And right now, as soon as we can come up with enough programming that will work, that we check in with Shelley Newhouse constantly and make sure that everything we're offering is safe and according to guidelines. As soon as we have a slate of things, we put out another newsletter. So we have done 6 over the past year since the pandemic started. And it's kind of interesting to look at what we offered in May. We still were thinking that this was a short-term thing that was happening, and we had some virtual programming. Some of our vendors were just starting to do it. So we had some science, and we had babysitter training kind of things. We were still offering things in person as soon as we could in May and June. We were getting outside, and that was working for everybody. I think Tina mentioned that too. People couldn't wait to get outside and see each other. And it had already felt like so long at the beginning of the summer. So we had mountain biking and tennis and tennis and tennis and golf and golf and golf. As soon as we built up a class, we were able to work with our instructors and our partners and offer additional programs for all of these things. So we did more of that than we have ever seen. We were also able to offer our flag football in the fall at a reduced capacity. And then we also still had it in our newsletter, and this is my part where now looking back, I say, what were we thinking? But we were still promoting concerts on the Common and a couple of trips for the fall, because everybody thought that we were certainly going to be through it by then. And a theater trip that was slated for January, that was certainly going to be fine. And as the fall went on, we continued to offer more and more outdoor programs. We did a punt, pass, and kick competition for the first time. We did a pickleball tournament. We kept trying some new programming. We had a bocce league. We had intro to cricket, a new program that was popular. And we did some off-site things with some of our partners. our vendors like the Academy for Traditional Karate figured out a way to offer their program in the parking lot as well as indoors, and Gymja Warrior and dance classes and things like that. So we were virtual, in person, and outdoors and on site at other places. We also started trying to offer some programs. We would get notification of something that sounded good, and we wouldn't even wait for a newsletter. So we were promoting and marketing programs just with email blasts and our Facebook page, and that actually was successful in most cases. We were able to operate some things even between newsletters. We did have we tried to approach some programming in new ways. So we have virtual science programs where the vendor is giving us all the science kits, and we have been delivering them to homes. So today, actually, Brett and I were delivering 31 science kits all over town to children, and hopefully in time for February vacation so that they can learn while having a good time. We're also working very actively with all the rec departments in our region and statewide. We get a lot of ideas from them for programming, figuring out how different people are operating, what they're operating. I'm working really closely with aquatics groups to figure out what we can do as far as opening the beach this summer. Brett is working very closely with a camp group so that we're trying to figure out if hopefully we can offer the playground program and the Tiny Tots and Kids Clubs program this summer, depending on the availability of the schools to us. We are very busy issuing permits. Every group in the world is really trying to get outdoors as early as possible. Everybody's ignoring that white stuff outside and pretending it's not there. We're moving ahead. We are waiting somewhat patiently to get back into the schools. We have not been in the school buildings. As you know, we don't have a rec center. Not having the ability to be in the schools has certainly been difficult, but we're hopeful that as soon as the schools can allow us in, we'll get in and start our indoor programming again. So budget-wise, I have absolutely no change except for salaries and from previous years, and a modest request. The revolving account certainly took a hit this year. We started at $590,000. We did have one travel company that we worked with that we had given deposits and insurances to for a trip to Mackinac Island. And that company closed very early on in the pandemic and said it was because of the pandemic. We did take a loss because of that. So although our net programming revenue for the year was $21,000, it was really $34,000 less that $12,500. We also have to cover Brett's salary, our program coordinator. That was $57,000. And we had committed long before COVID to fund the engineering and planning of the new Shawsheen School courts. So that is a $40,000 hit to the revolving account. So we're still at $515,000. I think that's pretty great considering a pandemic year with recreation and all its challenges. And we're hoping that things move along this year better than it started, and that we can get back to business. We miss everybody. This is very hard on recreation people. I certainly am very open to any questions that you might have for what's going on.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Mary Angelezzo. If you were allowed back into the schools, Karen, could you do it safely with the social distancing?
We could. We have you know, we work everything with Shelley, but absolutely, we have had a few classes that have been right in town hall. We require masks. We can disinfect. We have had absolutely no issues. I think we would want to start with smaller groups. If we could have a cooking class or a STEM class, we would like to start with those, of course, first, and smaller groups. Something like playground with 250 kids, that's another whole discussion.
So, how many classes were you having at the schools prior to the pandemic?
We were probably running 15 different programs. We had children's yoga, we had a pottery class, we have a sports 101, we have a kinder soccer. So we were in the middle of a whole bunch of classes that run, most of those were Saturdays, but there were also some evening classes, pickleball at the Woburn Street School, things like that.
And is it now because the school doesn't want anybody in the schools at this point, as far as outside vendors, so to speak?
That's right, right. Yeah. I did check in with Dr. Brand in December, and he has told me that I can certainly come back to him, but I know that during this surge is not the time. So I'm hoping that as numbers are falling right now, that we have the possibility of getting back in certainly by the end of the school year. I'm hopeful.
Anybody else? Do we have any comments from the public?
We do not.
Okay. All right, Karen. Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you.
Thank you all very, very much. And thank you all for your time and your efforts in being on this committee. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of hours. And as a resident, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Night.
All right, and now we have Terry McDermott with the historical.
Yes, and Bonnie Smith is here too. She's the chair of the
Hi,
historical.
Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie. Bonnie, should I go first? Probably, maybe?
Have at it, buddy.
Okay, I have a little presentation I was going to do. Thought it was very interesting when Karen said, so what have you been doing this year as far as recreation? We can certainly say that about the museum as well, but I can show you. So let's see. Okay, so Wilmington Historical Commission, Wilmington Town Museum is who I am presenting for. Just quickly to say, Historical Commission established 1973, Town Museum established 1999. 7 members of the Historical Commission, Bonnie, who's the chair, is here today. And then the 2 employees associated with the commission would be myself and Nancy Kerwin, who's the clerk. I thought I'd share with you some statistics for calendar year 2020. They're not that our statistics are ever really overwhelming, but they're pretty small this year. Signed 12 demolition permits. That's probably about half of what I normally sign. And visitors to the museum was 40. That is January, February, March, which traditionally aren't terribly busy months to start with. But of course, by March, we were shut down. So I thought I would show you, though, what we were able to do once the museum is not opened, and it will not be open for quite a while to come, I'm afraid. But I was back on the property by May, and I did do what I could to offer some sort of a service and a caretaker of the museum, which I thought was important. And one of the things in the spring when I first came back to the museum was I was really trying to appreciate and promote how beautiful the museum grounds can be outside, especially in the spring. One of the first things I was working on was keeping up some new hop plants that we had in front of the Carriage House. These were planted in 2019, I think it was, by an Eagle Scout, Cyrus Rich, and they really looked good this year. So you can see on the left, these are the how the hops looked early spring or mid-spring, I guess. And by September, you can see that we actually had some little hops growing. And of course, that's significant because Wilmington, as you probably know, was at one time, many years ago, known for its hops agriculture. Carriage House is part of, next door to the museum. On these pictures, I just kind of want to show how beautiful the museum grounds were and make the point that we were doing what we could to take care of the grounds. Of course, the DPW does an amazing job every year, but the fussy stuff like, trimming the bushes and things like that were done by myself during the year, and also by a volunteer. Steve Burkhouse actually put some time into it too. And I wanted to show again how beautiful. I'm no gardener, but I'm not doing too much to make these things happen, but there's just some beautiful plantings in the museum that have just been there. And these are some flowers that grow, a flowering bush that grows in front of the Carriage House. But also you can see in the left-hand picture, you can see it may not be obvious in the picture, but the Carriage House was getting pretty, the paint job was looking pretty rough this year. And later you can see the chips and everything in it if you look real close. But later in the fall of this year, Public Buildings had the prisoners come and they did paint the Carriage House, and it actually looks a lot better now. Also, the Carriage House, outside the Carriage House, there is a big set of stairs. If you've ever been by the museum, you can see it from the main street. Those stairs were also installed by a Eagle Scout, like at least 10 years ago, Nick Monteforti. And I show the stairs because they've had a little bit of work over the past year or two. The Public Buildings people replaced the railing because it was getting kind of worn. And Steve Burkhouse has done some work staining the railing. And he says he's going to come back and do some more work on it in this spring. And that's all volunteer work. Steve is just a great guy. And on the left, you can see on the railing, just wanted to point out again that without benign neglect here, my benign neglect has produced these beautiful roses that come back every year right next to the railing. And they've just been there as long as I've been there. It goes back to when people lived in the house, I guess. Okay, so some of the things I started this year, since we couldn't let anybody into the museum, and I guess I should say this might be a good time to say that opening the museum, out of all of the town buildings that are closed, the museum is probably the most problematic because it's small. Everything is small. The rooms are small. The windows don't open. At one point, when there were standards set for how many people you could fit into a room, most of our rooms, we were lucky if we could fit 2 people by the state COVID standards of the time. So I think it may be a while before we're taking people through the museum. I really look forward to seeing what happens in the coming months, but it is difficult to actually have people in an old house like what the museum is. And I had been following up, at least through December, other house museums in the area. And although some places, especially if they had big visitor centers, might have been opening, a lot of house museums just didn't open, or they opened their yard, or they opened their gift shop. But a lot of house museums just weren't opening to the public because it just wasn't safe. So anyway, one of the things I did this year to bring history to the people, since they can't come to me, is I started a Twitter account for the town museum. And I show here a couple of the things that I've been tweeting over the past, I guess it's 6 months now. A lot of time, I try to tweet at least 5 or 6 times a week, sometimes every day. Pictures from Old Town Criers or Wilmington Crusader, but also sometimes clippings from other newspapers if you talk about Wilmington history. And also sometimes I put out a picture of a museum artifact or a scene around the museum, or the past couple of weeks I've been putting up these now and then photographs. I have some photos of Wilmington from the 1950s or 60s, and I try to take a picture of that same scene today, like the one on the bottom of your screen now is Main Street. The first picture is from the late 50s, and the second picture is from late 1961, the same road. And I think the Twitter account has been reasonably well received. I usually get activity on it most days. People are liking posts, so I guess they're seeing it. And I'm getting the information, a lot of the information for these posts from the town archives. These boxes here are my collection, part of the collection of newspapers, old town newspapers, which is what I use for a lot of my postings. And I do a lot of my research actually through the library's website, because the library has a really amazing database of old town newspapers. But sometimes the images that are found on the library's website aren't as good as the originals might be. So I use the library's website to find something I might want to post on Twitter, and then I go to my archives to see if I can find a better image to use. And that's a big part of what I've been trying to do, and I hope to continue doing while the museum is shut down, which is organize our archives and artifacts. Because this is the time to do it. I mean, nobody coming into the museum, and there's a lot of things to be done as far as getting our collection inventoried and archived for future generations. Another thing I was able to do this year was to loan to the Veteran Services Office some mannequins that the museum had, because they had some military uniforms. These are theirs, not mine. And they were interested in displaying them. They have them up in their office, I guess. So I did not take these pictures. They were sent to me, but I thought they looked pretty cool. And it was one example of some of the work we've been able to do to help other departments in town. Another thing with the veterans was in September, there was a parade around town where it was to celebrate the ending of World War II, the anniversary of the ending of World War II, and to honor veterans, surviving veterans of that war. So we talking to the Veteran Services Office, we knew what the parade route was going to be. They were going to be going by the museum. We put out a sign that we had made up, and I was going to put out our George Spanos collection of World War II veterans photos, which is pretty extensive. Unfortunately, the weather that day was not great, so I was not able to put out as much of the collection as I wanted. The idea was just to have it on the street so people driving by could see it. But we did have a few, and Bonnie and I were there, and we waved at the cars going by, and were able to show that we remember and that we have artifacts of those people in those times. We were also hoping to bring the George Spanos collection back out again on Veterans Day this year, when there was going to be a ceremony on the Common, and we'd actually started talking to the Veterans Office about setting up some sort of display on the Common. But then the surge began, and it was understood that we were trying to avoid crowds gathering on that day. So we decided that this wasn't the year to bring out our George Spanos collection. So maybe another time. For the holiday social, the holiday time period, normally that's a very busy, big time of year for the museum, and I couldn't resist taking some photos from 2019, which is really our last big bash at the museum. You see what a holiday social looks like. The museum is decorated. We have people in period costume. We had some people singing. There were refreshments. It's always a good time. On the right, you see the picture of what we did this year, which is we decorated the outside of the museum, which we always do. And by the way, the wreaths were from donation funds, so but that was the best we could do, and I had to do it all myself because all my lovely volunteers were not able to come in and do a lot of the things that they normally do for the museum. But as the year has gone on, we have the museum and the Historical Commission has continued doing the types of things we normally do. One is signing demolition permits. Nowadays, I usually meet people in the backyard to sign a demolition permit, and I take a photo of it with my phone as opposed to bringing people into the office and making photocopies like the old days. This particular demo, once I sign a demo permit, part of what we do for the record is I go to the site and I take photos. Most demo permits I sign are not for structures that look this rough, but I thought this one was pretty dramatic, so that was the picture I used. Another thing the Historical Commission is working on is upgrading some of the house plaques. If you ever paid any attention looking around Wilmington, you see that some of our historic houses have plaques on them, giving the name and the age of the house. A lot of these plaques were given out 20 or 30 years ago, and they're in kind of rough shape. So the Historical Commission has actually begun evaluating the plaques to see which ones maybe need to be replaced or a replacement could be offered. In this case, somebody contacted us and told us they needed a new sign, which was agreed that we did. So the picture on the left was what the sign looked like after 20 plus years, and the bottom right was the replacement sign we were able to provide for them. Another thing the Historical Commission has been working on for a while is to raise awareness of the National Register Historic Districts in Wilmington. There's 5 of them. I'm sure it's almost impossible to see on the screen here, but there are 5 districts. I have them circled on the map there. The Center Village Historic District does have a sign. The other districts don't. But also just by creating, there was a walking tour that used to exist for the Center Village Historic District. I'm working on revising that, just trying to make people aware that these districts are an important part of our cultural heritage and a way to remember what the town looked like at one time. And the other thing the Historical Commission, of course, is interested in is just preserving historic properties in the town. Of course, the town museum is the marquee one, but the Roman House, the Bazell Center, the South School and the West Schoolhouse are all historic structures that the Wilmington Historical Commission is always interested in, and happy to help with any kind of preservation suggestions or advice that are required. And what I hope to be doing this year and next year, and anybody who's been on the Finance Committee for a while has heard me talk about this before, which is our window program. Did not get any windows restored this year because of COVID. Nobody was in the building. I wasn't in the building for a long time. But I would like in this calendar year, in this fiscal year and next fiscal year, to work on some of the windows. As I've said before, the museum has 45 windows. We have, what did I say? I think 9 of them we restored so far. They're all different sizes and shapes. I've taken pictures here of some of the ones that are in the roughest shape. So that's usually how I prioritize them, either by condition or visibility. This is actually not a super visible window. It's the upstairs bathroom that nobody uses. But the window was literally falling out of the frame, and Public Buildings actually sort of taped it back in for now. So, because I told them I was going to try to get the whole window restored sometime soon. So this is just a stopgap, because walking by the room one day and I realized the air was just blowing right in. So they did a pretty good job. I think that's duct tape. This is another window, also kind of rough shape. I think this is the downstairs bathroom, which window is also pretty rough. And these are smaller windows than some of the ones I've gotten restored before. The biggest windows we have are 12 panes, over 12 panes, over $2,000 a piece to restore. These other smaller windows cost less, although it can get close to $2,000 a piece. We have so many different, I think 6 different sizes of windows. So every time I get a different window, a different size window done, it has to be sort of reevaluated as to the cost. And this is oh, didn't mean to do that. This is just, I don't know if it's obvious from the picture, but these are 2 windows that were actually restored several years ago. But, and there's a little sign in the middle there because actually we got some funding from the Methuen Festival of Trees that helps pay for that. But that is a window that before those windows were restored, I think like 25% of the panes had cracks in them. And of course the paint was just a mess. So those windows look beautiful compared to what you just saw. So as far as our budget request, which is always pretty modest, we have 2 employees, myself and the clerk. Professional services, which is some of the money that would be used for something like window restoration, most likely at this point, at least in this coming year. $3,000, which is the operating budget for the museum, memberships, supplies, posters, signage, things like that. $1,500 is the budget for the Historical Commission. They pay for office supplies and cleaning supplies, but also just flowers and seasonal things for the museum and other town-owned properties. Sometimes they put wreaths and things on the Scales Keeper's house and town-owned buildings. And the goals for the next fiscal year, which is kind of what I've just sort of talked about: continued oversight of town's historic resources, including, as I talked about, the house plaques, raise awareness of the town's historic districts, continue museum inventory and organization, continue community outreach through social media in cooperation with the library and other town departments, I do, I can't know if I didn't hear whether Tina had mentioned this, but I know she's trying to do, or the library's trying to do so many different programs and do things outside. I did do a video with the museum, with the library, on the library's website, a historic video at the very beginning of the quarantine period. In December, I was supposed to be leading a tour of the cemetery, but then we got snowed out. So now I am scheduled to do a tour of the cemetery in May. Of course, and I'll continue the window restoration project. And one thing I talk about every year, I wish I'd made more progress, which is to explore obtaining a Harnden Tavern building conditions assessment report, which would be to get some sort of a vendor contractor in a historic assessment, a historic architect to assess the condition of the property and the best way to maintain not just the windows, but a lot of the other historic fabric of the building. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Well, I think you answered my question. I had a question about the window replacement project. So you took care of that.
Do you like
And
my window pictures?
yeah, I did. Kind of makes me sad to think.
Yeah, I know. And some of the windows look great. Like I said, I didn't come across in the picture, but the windows that have been restored really look fabulous. So
Yes, they did, definitely. And I think I say this every year, but you do an awful lot with very little.
oh, thank you.
Thank you
We
very
try.
much for everything that you do in keeping the Harden Tavern and the community up to date with everything concerning the Historical Commission. Very much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. We try. We try.
Does anybody have any questions?
I'd just like also to add to that, to thank Terry for all she does as well. She is the face of the Historical Commission, and she does an amazing job for us. And I really want to thank Terry for all she does, and thank the Finance Committee for their support. And Jeff, thank you for all you do and listen to us. I'd also like to thank our commission members, trying to do what we love to do in these times, as you know, has been very difficult. And also a special shout out to Steve Berghaus. Terry and I were talking about him today and everything that he does. He's kind of like our little museum gremlin. He just
great.
comes in and takes care of so many things. And the DPW is amazing to us as well. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and chat with you tonight. Appreciate
It's a
it.
pleasure to have you here. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? And do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you both for coming tonight and
Thank you.
keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have no minutes to review and vote on. So if there are no questions from the Finance Committee, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, I would just like to mention that Andrew Levine is on, I believe. And he was just voted on to join the Finance Committee last night. And we'll be seeing him at future meetings once he gets sworn in.
Oh, good.
Welcome, Andrew.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Michelle, is that you?
Yes, Michelle.
Seconded, John Dugas.
Okay. All right, Mary Ann,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Bernie,
Yes.
Kevin is not here, John is not here, and I also agree. So we have next week off, and we'll see you following week.
Excellent. Bye, guys.
Week. Thanks.
Have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.